When we think of history's most legendary warriors, some pretty standard images probably pop into your head. But honestly, few were as iconic or as genuinely feared in their day as the 19th century Maasai of East Africa. So in this explainer, we're going to peel back the layers, get past the cliches, and really break down the anatomy of what made them one of the most effective fighting forces on the entire continent. I mean, think about it. For a huge chunk of the 19th century, Arab and Swahili traders, guys who were pushing deep into Africa for ivory and slaves, basically put a giant no-go zone over Maasai territory. The risk was just too high. We're not talking about small raiding parties here. We're talking organized, disciplined war parties, like the one you're seeing, that could project power across huge distances. Is a story that tells you everything you need to know about the terrifying speed and finality of a Maasai attack. So get this. In 1893, a caravan of 300 well-armed Swahili traders is making its way to Uganda. They manage to hold off the warriors, but only until their ammunition runs out. The moment it does, the Maasai charge. Out of 300 men, only 3 made it out alive to tell the story. And this was not a one-off event. The historical record is just crystal clear. In 1877, a massive caravan, I'm talking 2,000 men, just flat out refused to go any further when they heard the Maasai were nearby. 10 years later, another one, this time 1,500 armed men, was just erased, completely wiped out. The key thing to understand is that this widespread fear wasn't based on rumors. It was based on a consistent, brutal, and deadly reality. Okay, so that's the what. Now for the how. How did they do it? How did warriors, fighting mostly with spears and shields, totally dominate opponents who often had guns? Well, the answer is a fascinating mix of their unique social structure and their absolutely brilliant battlefield tactics. The absolute core of the Maasai military machine was something called the Morban. This was basically the specific age group of young men who were initiated into the warrior class. They lived apart from everyone else, they trained all the time, and they were, for all intents and purposes, the standing army of the Maasai people. This system created a permanent, incredibly disciplined, and tight-knit fighting force that was always ready. And when the Moran went to war, they didn't just charge in a big mob. No, they used a very sophisticated and absolutely devastating formation. They called it the Eagle's Wing. Even the name sounds deadly, right? Now, what's so cool here is just how logical it all is. This formation was built for one thing, to shatter the enemy. You've got the bravest warriors right in the center, forming a wedge, the tip of the spear, designed to just punch straight through the enemy's front line. Then you have flank guards protecting their sides, making sure they don't get surrounded. And finally, a rear guard to provide support and lock it all down. It was a coordinated, terrifying, high-speed assault. You can just feel the sheer kinetic energy in this picture. But here's the really brilliant part. This ferocity was paired with incredible tactical discipline, especially when they started facing a new technology, firearms. The Maasai didn't just run into a hail of bullets, they actually developed a specific counter-tactic for it. This right here is just pure genius. They figured out the single biggest weakness of early muzzle-loading guns, that painfully long reload time. So they'd show up at a distance, maybe shout some taunts, and get the enemy to fire off a volley. The second those shots rang out, the entire Maasai force would hit the dirt or dive behind cover. Then, in that critical window of time, while the enemy was fumbling around trying to reload, they'd leap up and charge, closing the distance before a second volley could ever be fired. Incredible! Alright, so we've seen the group tactics. Now let's zoom in on the individual warrior, because their iconic look wasn't just for show. Every single piece of their gear was a weapon, both physically and, maybe more importantly, psychologically. So on the left, you've got their main weapon, the long-bladed spear, perfectly balanced for close-up fighting. And on the right, that unbelievable ostrich feather headdress. Just try to put yourself in the shoes of someone in a caravan. You see not one, but hundreds of these cresting a hill. This sea of black and white feathers bobbing in unison, making the warriors seem taller, bigger, almost inhuman. Let's break down the kit. The spear was about 1.7 meters long, with a wide 4-inch blade. It was perfect for these powerful underarm thrusts that could get right past an enemy's shield. The headdress, a mix of ostrich feathers and vulture ruff, was pure psychological warfare. And then there was the shield, the sarata, made from tough buffalo hide. But this was so much more than just a piece of protection. You see, these intricate patterns painted on the shields, they were a language. A Maasai warrior could be identified from way off in the distance just by the designs on his shield. It was like a uniform and a resume all rolled into one. The designs on the left half, usually in red, told you the warrior's clan and, most importantly, his age set, his Moran. The right half was more personal, with black designs that showed individual or sub-clan honors. In the absolute chaos of a battle, a warrior could take one look at a shield and instantly know if it was friend or foe, and even know their rank and family history. For decades, the Maasai system of warfare was basically unbeatable, but the world around them was changing, and it was changing at a dizzying speed. The end of the 19th century brought a completely new kind of power to East Africa, one that would challenge the Maasai way of life in a way no rival tribe ever could. Just look how fast everything happened. In 1883, the very first European finally manages to cross their territory. Just 5 years later, the Berlin Conference kicks off the colonial scramble for Africa. By 1890, Maasai land itself is being carved up on a map by European powers, and all around them, other peoples are starting these long, brutal wars of resistance against the Germans and the British. The era of Maasai supremacy was coming to a sudden, violent end. So what happened? Well, it wasn't one single thing. It was a devastating combination. The sources show that horrible epidemics like rinderpest and smallpox, which were introduced by outsiders, just ravaged their cattle, the source of their wealth, and their people. At the exact same time, their brilliant tactic for beating muzzleloaders became totally useless against the rapid-fire rifles and machine guns of modern European armies. Their world, and the way they fought, had changed forever, almost overnight. And that leaves us with this one last really powerful question. The story of the 19th century Maasai isn't just about fighting, it's also about incredible adaptation. It really makes you think, how does a culture, a people whose entire identity is wrapped up in a certain way of fighting, find a way to move forward when the very rules of war are completely rewritten?